Welcome to Shortcuts to Mastery. I'm your host, Maria Henning, and in my universe, life is for growth, and time is for bending. So hop in, my friend, buckle up, and let's get into it. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Shortcuts to Mastery. So excited to be here. I just got back from the South by Southwest conference in Austin 2024. It's still actually going on right now. It is Wednesday in the middle of the conference, and I already had plans to share about this conference experience, and then I got questions asking and requests asking me to share about it. So here I am. I learned so much. I got so many super interesting upgrades. I really put myself out there, and I have some fun stories to share with you. So if you are excited about conferences, networking, stepping into new versions of yourself, things like that, this is going to be the podcast episode to listen to. So let's talk about it. So really quick, what is South by Southwest? South by Southwest is a film, tech, and music festival that happens in Austin, Texas every year. And I think a lot of people think that it's just a music festival. I don't know if that's how it actually got started, but it really, because Austin has become such like an epicenter of tech companies, startups, things like that. Or maybe South by Southwest made it into that, or maybe because Austin was already attracting lots of tech people, then that's why South by, which is the nickname for the conference, South by, became more techy. I'm not sure what the whole lore and background is of the conference, but it is a film festival, a tech, and like a tech conference basically, and then a music festival as well. So it happens in Austin, and I live in Houston right now, or I'm chilling in Houston right now until I go off to Bali next month. And yeah, it's something that I already had in mind. And let me tell you the reason why. So in 2017, I was really, really big into this magazine called Fast Company. I don't know if you guys know Fast Company. I highly recommend them. It's a magazine and publication that talks about innovation and innovative companies and tech companies. And because we meaning me and also my family, so into Fast Company back in like 2016, 2017, like I'm saying, we knew that they actually ran a free event at South by, and I've been meaning to go back to that. And so when I remembered, and when I realized that I would be in Texas, a mere few hours away from the conference while it was happening, I knew I had to get my ass back to Fast Company's free events. So let me actually give a little bit more of a breakdown of like this conference situation. So yes, South by Southwest has official programming in the film festival and the music festival. So like really big artists, people premiering their movies, like celebrities, A-listers, like Nick Kroll was there, Anya Taylor-Joy was there, who else was there? Sydney Sweeney was there, world premiering their films. There's also so many free events that happen during the conference, which to sort of catch the overflow of all the people that are traveling to visit the conference. And Fast Company's event is one of those free events. So it's not part of the official South by Southwest programming that you would need like a badge to get into, that you need to buy, if it's like $1,000-ish investment for a lot of the badges to get into these talks. It's just a totally free 3-day event. So that's the event that I was mainly wanting to go to, and then I was hoping to catch all of the other sort of like free things that are happening. And I want to talk about why I went. Why did I go to this type of conference? And I think the reason I want to share it is because it really ties into a lot of the things that I talk about on this podcast, and which is just about my life. So, two main reasons why I went. So if this is like a tech festival or a tech conference, and it's in Austin, which is sort of like California in Texas, and this little like slice of, this world of entrepreneurs and, self-starter people, and, Austin is a lot more like spiritual and new agey compared to the rest of Texas. It was a very easy yes to make the decision to go and like get the most out of it, because as you may know or may not know, my commitment this year is to create community. That's why I left my apartment in Boston. It's why I am going to be in Bali in a couple of weeks. It's why I'm going to travel around quite a bit for the next 1, 2, 3 years, is to really get saturated with the community, right? The entrepreneurial community, the spiritual entrepreneurs that I want to connect to. And so it was the same thing. I went a few weeks ago also to Austin to support the one of the weekend workshops of this round of a like this cohort of a course that I took in San Diego in 2018. And as an alumni, I got invited back to support and sort of support coach and support this sort of weekend workshop. And again, for both of these events, like there may have been like a second of deliberation of like, oh, should I go? Should I not go? Should I make the investment to go spend the time to go drive up there, XYZ? And both of those have been such clear yeses because what is my commitment this year and for the next couple of years? It's community, right? It's community, it's connection, it's getting saturated with and making all of the networking connections with the people that are doing similar things to me. And as someone right now I mean, right now and also always has been really committed to my career and my career growth, being in a place like Boston where there wasn't anyone like me, anyone who had the dreams that I did, and the connections that I was seeking was really keeping me career wise like quite small, and I have big dreams. I have cool things that I'm not trying to, that I'm going to accomplish. And so, and I know the value of being surrounded by the right people, not just for like, oh, this connection is going to help me get here and there. Yeah, for sure. But just being like, just having friends, or that's why I use the word saturated, being around and having constant conversations with people who think big, who believe in themselves, who, have something to create, have something to say. It is extremely expansive. Like it's so supportive. And I have a whole, I know I keep talking about how I have this whole like friend podcast episode plan, and I still do. And I got requests for it this weekend too. So that's coming too. But it's really important to be surrounded by, you've heard this a million times, but it's really important to be surrounded by the right people, quote unquote. And for me right now, the right people are, yes, my friends who support me for sure, and also career wise. It's like it's weird because my career connections that I'm seeking are friends, right? So it's like people in my friend circle, the folks that I want to be surrounded by. I don't just want them to be career connections. I also want them to be my friends. Like I want my friends to be other entrepreneurs and other people with big dreams and things like that. So anyway, that's one of the reasons I went, was to fulfill my goal of community this year, my commitment to creating the community that I dream of essentially this year. And I met some amazing people. It was so great. And the other reason I went is because of the tech festival component or the tech conference component. Because maybe you are aware, maybe you're not aware, but I have a tech startup. I have a software startup. My app, the Cosmic Compendium, is a software that I developed, and it's in a working prototype phase, and I have so many dreams, and I already have developers that I'd love to work with to take the app to the next level. But the app that I built myself, the prototype that I built myself, works and is freaking amazing. And I will link it in the show notes below if you want to go check it out. But it's a software startup. I am a software founder. And the real reason that I wanted to go is because this whole time with the compendium, I've had a bootstrapping mindset. So same with the whole business, it's like I feel like that is the mindset of so many of us online business owners. Like we didn't take on loans or like take on VC funding, venture capital funding, or angel investors to build our online companies because we don't really need that much money to get started versus, if you are a tech founder, it's really common to take on investors because you need to hire a lot of people and pay them a really big salary and maybe even like rent an office and things like that. But one of the big allures of owning an online business is that there's very little overhead. It's just your time, and a couple $100s a month and maybe even less of just the softwares that you need to run your company. Maybe you need to pay a couple $100s a month for Kajabi to have your courses on, and you need to pay $100 a year for your website or whatever, and like $6 a month for Google. Like it's very low cost compared to what so many other companies require to get started. And then think of a brick and mortar company, which isn't even in the realm of this conversation. But like if you wanted to start a coffee shop, for example, and you wanted to have a brick and mortar location, you might be paying $10, $15, $20,000 a month on rent. You need $10,000 just for the coffee machine, let alone all the furniture, So anyway, why was I talking about this? Because in our world, I say, you might be like me, like online business owners, we have this bootstrapping mindset because we don't need to take on investors because we don't have a lot of big overhead at the beginning, right? And so we were like, okay, I'll just do this on the side of my regular job, and then once I start making money, then I can, hire more, or like hire support, or I can invest in this course that I want, and XYZ. But and that mindset has deeply served me 100%, and I've never taken on any sort of money for the business. I obviously use my credit cards, and I've put things on credit cards for beginning the business, but I've never taken on a bank loan or taken on investors or anything like that. And so I had that same mindset for the software company, for the compendium, and I built it myself. And, it was very cheap to build, almost basically free to build, just took me a lot of time. I mean, honestly, the building didn't really take that much time. It was just writing the content that took forever. But yeah, building it myself was basically free. And then thinking of taking on developers, like my plan was just to do it myself. And it's still sort of my plan, but part of the reason I really wanted to go to South by Southwest and specifically go to the tech conversations and meet other startup founders is because I think there's a very different mindset between someone who's like, I'm going to take on funding because I'm going to make it big, versus like where I'm at right now, like sort of bootstrapping my company. Like it definitely feels, don't worry, like, trust me, I still have this belief of like, I'm going to make it big for sure with the compendium, but I wanted to be around other tech founders who are thinking in a more traditional sort of tech startup way, and who are, taking the leaps to believe in themselves, take on funding, have investors, hire on big teams and things like that. That's not right away where I would like to go, but I knew that I was going to be highly benefited, as if that's the right way to phrase it, by being around these types of thinkers. That's another reason why I went. So I really just wanted to connect, and both of those sort of whys are very much related to just being around other types of people like me, other self-starters, other big dreamers, other people who, it's like this idea of like New York or LA, like folks who move to those places. It's sort of like a place where the people that move there like self-select. Like everyone who moves there is like, I belong here. I have something to say. I have a big dream. And conferences like this, especially really big ones like South by Southwest, the founders that are going to those spaces have that similar type of mindset too. And it was an epic experience. So let me give you a brief rundown of what I did and the talks I went to and all the things that I learned, because it was a very expansive experience. So the events that I wanted to go to, or the one event, which was Fast Company Grill. So Fast Company is like free 3-day, conference talk thing, was happening Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And I actually initially wasn't going to go, or sorry, I initially was going to go. And then my little brother spontaneously came to visit Houston. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to stay because he's in town. And then he sort of spontaneously decided to go back home. He lives in LA, and he made that decision on, I believe, on Saturday. Saturday was happening. I missed the first day when Nick Kroll came and spoke, which I'm like so sad about because he's so cool. And but yeah, it was happening that day, and I was like, okay, it's fine. Like I'll go another time. I'll go next year, whatever. But then he decided he was gonna go travel the next day, travel back to LA on Sunday. So I was like, okay, then I'm gonna drive tonight to Austin to go. And so I very spontaneously drove to Austin on Saturday night at 8 p.m. So I missed the first day of Fast Company, but it was totally fine. And I almost took another friend of mine, but then she wasn't able to go, and I just spontaneously drove to Austin, arrived at my friend's place. She was out of town and so graciously let me stay in her apartment at like midnight on Saturday. And Sunday, which was the Pisces new moon, by the way, I went and showed up early to Fast Company Grill, 9:30 a.m., ready to go. The doors opened at 10, so that's why I say early. Not super early in terms of the morning time wise, but earlier in terms of when they opened. And as I was standing in line, which, by the way, hot networking tip, talk to the people who you are standing in line with. That is like one of the best ways to start, networking. I met a girl standing in line, and she told me about the place next door. And she, we were just kind of talking. I was like, hey, what brings you here? What are you excited to look at? She was like, yeah, I'm going to look at this talk. But then I think later in the day, I'm going to go to Founder's House next door. And I was like, Founder's House? What is that? And next door to the restaurant that was rented out for Fast Company Grill was another restaurant rented out by Inc. magazine for their Founder's House talk. And both of these magazines, as it turns out, are owned by the same person or company or whatever, same ownership. And they're both these like tech founders, innovation, etc. publications. And both were having these identical or a similar type of events, you could say, with lots of talks, space for networking, free swag, happy hours at the end of the day, things like that. And I was like, what the heck? This is amazing. How can I get in? She was like, you have to know someone, but I can just forward you the email. And I was like, oh my God, please, like, send me the email. And so she forwarded me this email, and I got to sign up for that too, which was really cool. And both of the events were free. But I get to Fast Company because that was what I was excited about, and I hadn't looked at the schedule yet for Founder's House. By the way, my dog is in the closet / recording studio with me, so if you hear some adorable snoring in the background, that's what's happening. But yeah, we get to oh my gosh, she always snores so much during these podcast episodes. Not really ever any other time, but or maybe I just hear it more because it's in my quote unquote recording studio. But anywho, so I get to Fast Company Girl. I go through some talks. There were some talks like innovating through the climate crisis. The second one was called the new playbook for innovation. So what do we need to innovate? Thinking about how to build innovation as a practice. And for both of those, there wasn't any time to ask questions, but I would have loved to have asked a question related to like weaving in the concepts of Gene Key 3 in that question, because both of these questions are asking, or both of these talks are talking about innovation, and that is the gift of Gene Key 3, where the shadow is coming from chaos, leading to the city of innocence. And so I really wanted to talk about like how do you guys use chaos or like a wicked problem as like a breeding ground for innovation, or how would you innovate through chaos or something like. I just wanted to ask something related to that, but I didn't get to because there was no time at the end for questions from the audience, which was totally fine. The talks were fine. Got to sit next to the girl that I connected with. I actually Canva was sponsoring part of Fast Company Girls event, which was dope because I've been a loyal Canva user for years. And their little event, or their little booth there, was you did like a little quiz to see what brand you are, and there were 4 different hats, like free hats with little slogan that they would give you depending on what your quiz said. And one of them was like, let's circle back, and the other one was just tag me. And then there were 2 others that I can't remember right now. And I don't think I got the just tag me answer, but I told the guy that was like talking me through the quiz, I was like, I really hope it says just tag me, because that's would be most relevant to me in my business, because I run my business through Instagram. And like I said, I don't think I got that answer, but then he handed me a just tag me hat anyway. But it was glitched, and so it said only, oh my gosh, Mika, it only said just tag M. And I showed it to him, and he was like, oh my God, like that hat is, fucked up or whatever. Do you want a new one? Do you want one that says the thing you're going to say? And I was like, are you kidding me? My first name starts with an M, and this has to be the most unique hat that you have. He was like, yeah, this is like a 1 of 1 hat. I was like, oh, I'm 100% keeping it. We like showed it to all the employees. It was so fun. So love my little free swag from Canva. How cool. But yeah, and then I went over to Founder's House, and those conversations were so interesting, and it was so perfect for what I was looking for. So I went to 3 conversations and 1 meetup there in a row. So I was there for quite a long time. And the first talk was by Sunira Madani, who is the founder and was the CEO, but she has since exited, of a company called Stax Payments. So like a payments company. I'm going to assume it's something like PayPal or something like that. And she took that company in a decade to a unicorn, as they say in the tech world. So $1 billion company, $1 billion valuation. And the talk was called Your Next Move, What's in a Roadmap? ? What's in a roadmap? The road to profitability is paved with good planning. And so the whole talk was supposed to be about, how, like, what she planned or how she planned her things, what she put into a roadmap. She talked about what I loved, some of the things that I loved that she said, and this was the question I got in my DMs from my good friend and coach Kinsey. She wanted to hear about all the sort of businessy type things that I learned because of these little workshops. She didn't know that there was this conference had little workshops like this, and so some of the things that I learned from this talk, which were super cool. So she basically was really, Sanira, this founder, was really focused on threes. So like having three, goals a year that you work towards, having 3 tasks a day. And this is not something like super innovative, but just the way that she talked about it, like she just kept coming back to that. And a lot of the answers that or a lot of the questions that she was being asked, she would just be like, well, if I would look at like my 3 needle movers for that day, or like my 3 goals for the quarter, or my 3 goals for the year. And I appreciated like, it was cool to see that a freaking founder of a billion-dollar company has such a simple, way to approach a roadmap. Another one of the things that I really appreciated from her, which was super interesting, was that she talked about how her life roadmap like ended up becoming more important than her business roadmap. And the thing that she said that I thought was kind of shocking actually, was she was like, yeah, I took this company to $1 billion, but I look back and I lost the last decade of my life. I'm like, what? Like you fulfilled the dream that like basically every like tech startup person, entrepreneur like wants to fulfill, and you have regret around it. Like I found that so interesting. And she talked about how she sort of just kept going because she felt like she should. Because of what I just said, right? That's every quote unquote every tech founder's dream, is to have their company go unicorn. And she describes the experience of quote unquote going unicorn. And it was basically like, just a week of celebrating that, she was like, yeah, and then we got the valuation, and then we had this whole press conference where we like announced it, and then we had these parties and these dinners. She was like, and then it was over. And it was like, 10 years of my life, like working towards this, and it was over in a week, over towards this moment. And then immediately, I forget who she said this to her, but she was like, immediately then I was told, all right, let's take it to 2 billion. And she was like, what? And she talks about how she went into like such a deep depression after that, because she was like, literally, what the fuck was it all for? Like, what the actual fuck was it all for? Here I am, having spent 10 years of my life trying to and succeeding in taking this company to $1 billion. And I look back and I actually did it because I felt like I should, which is such a crazy achievement, by the way. Imagine being like, oh man, like it's great that I took this company to $1 billion, but I only did it because I felt like I should. Imagine shoulding yourself into $1 billion company. I mean, I just think it's so insane. I mean, congrats to her. What a beast. And she launched a new company the next day, which was really cool. But I found that to be super interesting. And, yeah, like she talks about how after receiving the $1 billion valuation, quote unquote, going unicorn, whatever, she goes into this sort of deep depression and sort of takes a sabbatical and spends time with her family, and chooses ultimately to step away as CEO of the company. And that was like a year and a half ago, and she was like, I'm never going to launch another company again. And then the next day she was like, and my new company is like launching tomorrow. I don't remember. It's called Worth. I don't remember what the company is about exactly. She also has she has a podcast, I think, called CEO School. So where she talks about, I think her experiences and sort of mentors female founders. One of the things too that I appreciate about her, she talked a lot about being a woman, and having the experience of being a female founder, in this like sort of $1 billion world. So anyway, it was super interesting. So that was that talk. And during that talk, something very interesting was happening. I was in the front row, which is another one of my like sort of networking and visibility tips for these events. Be in the fucking front and ask questions. So again, I wanted to ask a question at the end of this talk, but there was also no time at the end for audience questions. But during that talk, the camera guy who was like the videographer and editor for the film and the videos taken during these events was filming me the whole time. Because I was in the front, the light was hitting just right, and dare I say I looked amazing, and I was taking notes. And so I seemed to be a good subject for, getting some good B-roll for like promotional content for their events. And I kept making eye contact with him, and he was like, sorry, I don't want to stalk you. This is just really good content. I was like, no problem. So then I just let him do his thing. And afterwards, I tried to to find him to be like, hey, where can I get this content? But I wasn't able to until much later. So stick around for the end of that story. But it was during that talk that I met this videographer guy and was like filmed the whole time in the front row, which was really cool. The second talk I went to was called Beyond Bootstrapping: Winning in a Shifting Market Without VC Dollars, without venture capital dollars. Which, hello, is exactly the kind of thing that I was looking for. So even though I was excited about being expanded into the idea of taking on investors for my software startup, I still right now I'm like mostly in the bootstrapping market, or mindset rather. And to literally have a whole talk which was about beyond bootstrapping, the talk is called Beyond Bootstrapping: Winning Without VC Dollars. So it's like, how can you take your bootstrapping to the next level, was like so perfect. And it was 3 female founders, which was so cool. So it was Kate something, the founder of Luminary, Deepa something, the founder of Dagny Dover, and then Paige Mykoski, who founded Aviator Nation. And Aviator Nation is the only company that I really was familiar with. I think I've heard Dagny Dover, which, by the way, the next day I totally received a free Dagny Dover bag. Like, what the fuck? Like a fanny pack bag from them, which I'm sure is in the, $40 to $50 to $60 range. It was very cute, very excited about that. But love all the free shit. But Aviator Nation was so fascinating. Her story, like, she's from Texas, which was cool. Arlington, I believe she said, moved to like LA or Malibu or something because she just loved surfing, and then just started making her own clothes, and everyone kept trying to buy them off her. And she bought, like, the way she tells her story, she was like, okay, like, if people want these clothes, let me try and do it. Her first like attempt at selling her clothes was buying a $500 spot at a market, and she made $8,000 that day just selling her freaking clothes. Like, sold all of her clothes in one day that she had made. And since then she has not ever taken on any investors for this, like, now huge apparel and now events company that if you looked up, I'm sure you would recognize. And she was so cool. She was dressed so cool. She was so fucking awesome. And she now lives in Austin. And yeah, hearing them talk about their experiences were so interesting. Like, Aviator Nation's like 18 years old. Luminary, which is like I think like a service-based sort of female founder thing company, is about the same age as my business. So I think they're 5 years old, maybe like a year older. And then Dagny Dover, they took on like sort of a bootstrappy type of investment. So they never took on like venture capital money, but I think they did a round of like friends and family. And yeah, exactly. So taking on money from friends and family. And it was a super inspiring talk. Again, they had no freaking time for questions at the end, but what was really cool about that is I got to meet Paige afterwards. So another one of the things that I did a lot is I put myself in front of these incredible people after their talks and actually tried to connect with them. And so I didn't really have, since I'm not a product-based company, there wasn't really anything for me at that moment that I could see any real opportunity to do anything with these founders. But it was cool to have a brief conversation with Paige and hear about, how she's liking Austin since having moved there and blah, 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 which was super fun. Then there was a female founders meetup. And it was just, 30 minutes of time to just meet the other female founders in that space. And I met a couple of great girls, and we got connected on Instagram, which was fun. And then by the time the last talk that I wanted to go to came around, I was very exhausted. The talk was perfect. It was called Think Like a Female Founder: The Unique Perspectives of Women-Led Businesses. And I was so tired, to be honest. I need to get some food. Because I just got in like at midnight the previous night, started my day at like, 7:30, 8, got to this event at 9:30, and by this time it's like 1:30 p.m. and I've been like listening, asking questions, whatever. And I just eventually went home and just rested for a little bit, but I came back for the Fast Company Grill happy hour. And I talked to a lot of people there, which is really cool. Talked to some other founders, asked them about their experience with taking on investors. Because for me, like, here's, as a brief preview, my sort of mindset right now around the compendium. Like, I'm very reluctant to let go of pieces of my company, because I don't know if you're unfamiliar, when you take on investors, you give them equity in your company back. So I say I'm raising $1 million, I say, great, and now you own 20% of my company. So you have 20% of the say of what I do. And I have no interest in that. I have no interest in giving up parts of my company, especially because I don't need $1 million right now to take the compendium to the next level. Like, that's just not, I mean, if I received it, that'd be great. Hello, universe. But I'm unwilling to give up pieces of my company. And so I got to talk to a lot of people about how they felt about that. And all of them just kept saying, like, when you take on investors, you sort of want to take on a partner too, someone who gives you their expertise as well as their money, and partners with you and believes in you and XYZ. And thinking back of all of the tech content that I consumed back when I worked at a software company in 2018 as a product manager, it was reminding me of all of that, because that's what I always heard is like, take on investors who also believe in you and who are also going to support you with their time and expertise and not just their dollars. But it's still, I'm not convinced that I need to give up any pieces of my company to take the compendium to the next level. But it was really cool to connect with people and just hear their experiences. And I talked to a guy who very quick, like, as soon as he saw, like, I missed a talk by one of the co-founders of Canva, and one of the guys that I was chatting with was like, oh, I wish I could have talked to him. And then he sees him walk by and he goes, I'm gonna ambush him. And I go do it. So he ambushes the Canva guy. I don't know what came of that. But the coolest thing is I got to reconnect with the guy who was filming me for all of Sanira's talk. And it was the videographer and editor of this sort of, events filming videos. And we talked briefly, and I was like, hey, like, where can I get access to this? Like, when are you going to post it? Is it going to be, where is it going to be? Da da da. And it's going to be to promote their event next year. But he was like, what about tomorrow? Are you coming tomorrow? And I was like, yeah, I'll be here tomorrow. And he was like, hey, why don't we interview you? And I was like, done. And I got his number. I put my number in his phone. And I was like, I don't even know what you're trying to interview me for. I'm assuming you're going to ask me about these events. But I was like, what am I trying to do? Get visible, connect. So yes, anything that is going to help me get visible and connect or be connected to other people, I will absolutely do. So I was like, done, interview me, easy, let's do it. So that was super exciting. But I came back at 5 for the happy hour. It ended at 6:30, and I was like, well, I just came back. I had rested at home for like 3 hours or whatever, between 2 and 3. And I was like, I'm not going to go all the way back home. Like, let me figure out something to do. So I just walked over. I sort of walked over to a coffee shop, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to go home. Like, what do I do? So I got a hot cocoa because it's kind of cold, and I spent some time Googling things to do. And I ended up finding this cool website that sort of tells you about all the free, like, South by adjacent events that are happening in Austin, like, while the conference is going on. And I found this secret garden party hosted by a guy named Andrew Young, who is ex-Google, ex maybe Amazon or something like that. And he hosts these like tech parties. And I was like, absolutely, like, that's the thing I want to go to. Like, there were lots of other things happening, but it was like hard to tell when they were happening or whatever. But I was like, that one's happening tonight. We're doing it. Let's go. And I RSVP'd for it, but it was already at capacity. And so they were like, you're on the wait list. Like, we'll let you know if you can get in. And I was like, I don't care. Like, I'm getting in. Who cares? And of course, to like Uber for 10 minutes, it was like $70 or something, because there was just so much happening at the conference. And I looked out and I was like, oh, it's so annoying. It was like a 20-minute walk. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll just walk. It's fine. But I looked outside and I saw a bird scooter. I don't know if you're familiar with bird scooters, but similar to Lime scooters, but it's like these like electric scooters that are just around, and you can just rent one wherever it is. And it's sort of like the rentable bikes, the city bikes or whatever, but they don't have to be returned to any location. You just literally drop them anywhere. And obviously not on the street or the sidewalk, but like sort of in between, in a safe place. But you can just, by paying, you just unlock it, and then you can go and scoot around. So I just got on my little scooter and I scooted over to this party and had so much fun on the drive. It felt so liberating. This is one of those moments of like quantum leap, right? And I actually filmed it and put it on my story, but it was like, look at me just in Austin, solo founder at South by Southwest, finding cool after parties to go to, having just left a super inspiring talk day, and just like seeing a scooter available, downloading the app, and like fucking scooting my ass over to this cool ass party. Like, it was very much like a like a movie montage sort of moment for me. And I hope you can see the picture that I'm trying to paint. But it was so cool. The weather was beautiful. The vibes were so cool. I felt so expanded. And I love spontaneous stuff like that because it's like spontaneous stuff like that. I mean, number one, finding the party, and two, sort of like, oh, let me just scoot myself over there by seeing the scooter outside of this coffee shop. Because spontaneous things that are by definition unplanned feel very quantum leap energy to me, because it's like it shows you what's possible if you go with the flow, so to speak. And not only go with the flow, but are willing to say yes. You know, if I had like planned my whole day and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm done at 6:30 when the happy hour ends, I would have just got an Uber and just gone home and paid the $70 and whatever the fuck, you know. But because I was like, no, like there's something more here for me. And I went to this coffee shop and I was like, let me just Google some shit to do. It took me a while to Google and find some good stuff. Um, and I was determined and committed to like have a great night that night. I don't know, like the possibility was open. I hope you get what I'm saying. The spontaneous moments feel very quantum leapy to me, because again, you're stepping into like a different timeline than the one that you would normally plan for out of habit and routine. So it was really fun. And I went to Andrew Young's party and met the coolest freaking people. So, by the way, got in. They did not ask for any sort of QR code or anything like that. They had no idea I was on a wait list and that I technically wasn't accepted yet or whatever. Was just like allowed to go in. I think especially because I came early and I met lots of different people, different founders, tech founders, people who were doing similar things to me, people who were doing very different things to me. But one of there were three rather really interesting interactions that I'll share right now. After meeting like four or five people, I ended up meeting and talking to this guy who was a corporate attorney, and a venture capitalist, like a VC attorney. So we had some conversations around that, and I find law very interesting. And there wasn't a direct sort of like, you know, okay, you can help me, because I'm not where his clients would be necessarily, and I have an attorney who's my best friend, so I feel fine about that. But it was fun to connect with him, and he gave me his card, which I normally wouldn't take. But for some reason, I took his card. I took a picture of it, because anytime I receive a business card, I take a photo. But for some reason, I didn't give him the card back. I typically take a picture of the card and then I give it back because I don't want to fucking carry around a bunch of business cards. But for some reason, I took the business card. And I was like, oh, it was nice to meet you, whatever. Da da da. I walk around. Here's another, by the way, hot tip that I'm sprinkling throughout these. I'm sprinkling throughout this episode. If you go to one of these events and you really want to network rather, if you want to network and you want to meet people, do not stand in one spot. Do not stand in one spot at these events. Walk around. Walk around. Go stand in a line for a drink. Then get your drink. Walk around again. Walk around the space. Stop here. Stop there for brief moments. Maybe take a look around and then get back to moving. You will not talk to someone, or like you won't talk to anyone if you're just standing in a corner or even standing in the middle, really. Like, if you are standing still and obviously looking at your phone, no one's going to come up to you and talk to you. So walk around, and through walking around, people will either call out to you or say something to you, or you'll see something to connect with. Like, the reason that attorney and I started talking is because I took a beat to like look up at a screen that was playing a soccer game, and he just walked over and was like, oh, are you watching the game? So perfect example of like how to start a conversation. Just comment on the environment, comment on what's happening, but you need to keep moving, you know. Keep moving, take a brief pause. If you don't talk to anyone, move again. Do not stay in the same location at these networking events. But yeah, so we said bye, and I started walking around again, and I walked into a room I hadn't walked to yet, and literally just walked to like the edge of it where there was nothing. And then I turned around to sort of keep doing the rounds, and someone called me over, and I forget what he said. But I don't know, he said something and sort of called me over, and then we just stood in line and talked. And this guy was freaking awesome. He connected me to so many people that day. He had so many friends there. There was like other friends of his standing in line. He put us in touch. And we spent the next sort of hour talking, and he was great. And we're in touch, and he asked a lot about the compendium, which was fun, and different things like that. And then he eventually connected me to this guy who has an AI coaching startup. Very Aquarius of him. And the reason I know what his sun sign is because when I told him what I did, he asked me, "Oh, you probably get this a lot, but can you astrology me?" is what he said. And I was like, "I get this so much that I made a freaking meme about it." If you've seen my Selena Gomez meme about reading people's charts at a party like an oracle, you'll know what I'm talking about. But yeah, like I was like, yeah, I get this all the time. I made a whole ass meme about it, and I would absolutely love to do that. And so, two interesting things happened during this interaction. Number one, it was taking a long time to pull up his chart on genetic matrix because there were so many people on the internet. There was like 1,500 people at this party. So while it was taking because it was taking such a long time for genetic matrix to pull up his chart, he like sort of started to complain. He was like, wow, this is taking like such a long time. And like then like sort of joked about that to the other people who were standing in the group. And I just put my phone down and I look up and I sort of hold my hand out like I'm gonna like stop him, like, you know, put it like almost like stop, like put it on his chest, but obviously it did not touch this man. Do not touch strangers. But I hold my hand out and I just look him in the eyes and very calmly go, "This is a great gift that I'm giving you. Like, I normally charge hundreds of dollars for these sessions because I was just going to read a couple of his gene keys to him in a casual, informal way. But it's still super high value, me sharing your gene keys with you. Like, no one does gene keys like I do." So I look up at him and I go, "This is a great gift that I'm giving you. Uh, I normally charge hundreds of dollars for these sessions. So, like, it's okay. Like, give it, I don't remember how I ended. I don't remember I don't remember what I said to end the conversation, but, he was like, "No, it just like brought him fully back." Like, he just came back in and he was like, "No, you're absolutely right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that." And I was like, "Yeah, you're welcome. I'm excited to do this." And I charge hundreds of dollars for this stuff. Like, this isn't like something I just like, I'm not like, "Dance, Bucky, dance." Like, "Oh my God, again, I made this meme, the Selena Gomez meme or whatever, because it is like a party trick. And sometimes people can treat it like a party trick and treat it like something just goofy and silly. And it can be for sure, but that doesn't mean that I'm still not giving you so much knowledge that I've worked very hard to develop and studied for years and fucking make my living off of." So it was such an interesting moment of standing up for yourself, I guess, especially when I normally might be super people pleasy in those scenarios because this guy, is 10 years older, has this amazing company, whatever, very successful founder, blah, blah, blah. In a lot of those scenarios, I'd be like, "Oh, like, I want you to like me," right? But for the last couple of years, I really haven't felt that. I think especially since, deconditioning in the human design experiment and contemplating my gene keys, that people pleaser in me at parties and wanting to feel included and, not wanting to, I don't know, upset someone or disappoint someone or whatever has really like faded. And it was actually what was cool about that experience was how natural and not dramatic and not like it didn't feel like effort to me to like genuinely stop him and very calmly, not like in a mean way, but calmly be like, "This is an amazing, very generous thing I'm doing. Like, please be patient. It's gonna pull up. Like, I normally, just so you know, charge a lot for these sessions. So let's just be patient." I think that was probably the vibe of like me, how I ended it. But it was cool to see, again, how naturally that came up because I know that me 4 years ago, before this work, like before the gene keys and human design work specifically, probably would have been a lot more people pleasy. So that was cool. But the second thing that happened is in the middle of our reading or maybe waiting for the genetic matrix to pull up or whatever, he was like, "Oh yeah, I talked to this guy named Morgan and I totally forgot to get his card." And I go, "Morgan Smith?" The corporate attorney? And he goes, "Wait, actually, yeah, like that's the guy." And I was like, "Wait, seriously?" Because I have his card right here. And he was like, "Oh no, like don't give it to me. Like I already like I'll just write it down." And I was like, "I took a picture of it. Like I never take people's cards." And it was literally the freaking attorney that I had spoken to for a while, not knowing why the fuck I was speaking to him. And I feel like one of the other reasons I was at this party was to connect these two men together, was to like deliver, like pick up a card from one person and then deliver it to the next, which was so interesting. So that was another really fun thing that happened at that party. And I met tons of people that night. And Mike, the founder of this AI coaching company, got so much from that Gene Keys reading. I just briefly gave him an overview of his life's work, evolution, and IQ. And very brief overview, and he got so much from that. Something I told to my readings on repeat students, I'm constantly reminding them of how valuable this information is. I was like, that man's life is never going to be the same. Like, he is forever changed because of that 30-minute conversation that he had with me about his gene keys. And that is the power of these readings. And my readings, why I describe them this way is because this is the truth. They are defining before and after moments in someone's life. There was a time, if you've studied your own human design and gene keys and you're listening to this, you know this to be true. There was a time before you knew your human design or gene keys or astrology, and there was a time after, and those times are very different. And that was that moment for this guy, Mike, for this founder. And that is the moment that all my reading clients experience when they're in a session with me. I know that that moment is a defining moment in time for them. There was a time before they knew their gene keys and before they got a reading from me, and there was a time after. So it was cool to see that he got so much from that. And of course, he wanted to know more. And I was like, well, book a reading. And he was really excited about that. So we'll see when we connect next. But either way, it was such a good time. And what I got from these experiences is, it's number one, I'm proud of seeing how far my confidence has grown in these spaces, because the last time I was at Fast Company Grill was 7 years ago, when I was a fresh college grad and had nothing interesting to my name in the career sense of the word, at least, and felt very unsure and very, what's the word, like, yeah, just like small compared to all these big names and big people and whatever. And the difference between me then and me now is really cool, because so many of the people that I met want to be where I'm at now. They want their own company and their own software startup and their own, like, I've been living off of my company for the last 4 years. That's been my only job since January 2020. And that's what so many people want who go to these spaces. So it was really cool to like be someone else's goal for once and not be feeling like I'm at the bottom of the ladder in terms of like, not in like a bad way, like I'm less than, but just like at the start of the journey. Maybe that's a better way to describe it. Start of the journey. And I feel like I've advanced so much since then, which I have. So it was cool to see the difference in my confidence around that. It was cool to stop a grown man in his tracks of complaining of receiving a free reading. Like, hello, accept the generosity here. And us having a chuckle about it. And it was very fun to like deliver a card from one person to another. Like, that was just like, that feels so magical, and I truly want to know what the butterfly effect of that is. I find that so interesting. And then, yeah, the next day was such a cool day. I went to Founder's House the next day because freaking Lauryn and Michael Bosstick were talking, the first talk of the day. Lauryn Bosstick is the founder and creator of The Skinny Confidential, and she and her husband Michael together own Dear Media, which is a podcast production house, and they have one of the biggest podcasts ever, the Him and Her podcast. What is it? Is it called The Skinny Confidential? Him and Her? Or is it just called Him and Her? I don't know. But they have a huge fucking podcast, and their talk was called Married to the Business and Each Other, the Highs and Lows of Building a Media Empire. And guess what? There's no one who's spoken about gene keys on their podcast. And I was like, this is my time to shine. I am going to go to this talk, number one, because I want to hear them talk and I want to see them and hear what they have to say about this. And I'm going to ask a question, of course. But number two, I want to meet her, and I'd love to give her a free Gene Keys reading, and I'd love to talk about Gene Keys on their podcast and introduce Gene Keys to their audience. That is a huge dream, And I did my tips that I've been giving you. I sat in the front. I asked questions, and I was the first person to ask a question, and I got a great answer. My question was, so a lot of the talk was like, the challenges of being married to each other while running these companies. And I think that I'm sure is like the content that sells and is sexy. Like, oh, it's so hard when we're like fighting in the middle of the night, like whatever. I didn't fucking give a shit about that. My question was about, what are the advantages of being married? Because and not just being married, but like these guys have known each other since they were 12. Like, they've been in a relationship forever. And it's not like being married to me is the least interesting thing. It's just more like, what are the advantages of like being in partnership, business partnership with someone that you've been in intimate partnership for decades? And I think this is something I think about a lot, especially when I look out at a lot of the other like female founders and female business owners in my industry. So many of them, not all of them for sure, and I don't know about I don't know if it's the majority, but a good chunk of them, let's say 40 to 60% of them, are in relationships and talk often about how supportive that is emotionally, financially, physically, whatever, just to have intimate partnership, whether it's, marriage or not. And so I know that there have to be so many advantages. So that was my question. And they had some really funny answers. Lauryn talked about how when they're doing their podcast and interviewing people, she can just give him a look and he'll know what that means because they've just been together for so long. And he also spoke about the advantages of being in the podcast together, where having like a man and a woman interviewers interviewing together can allow you to get access to more answers. So, Lauryn talked about how they interviewed Brian Johnson, who's the guy that wants to like live forever. I don't know if you guys have seen this guy, this scientist, dude who is trying to live, basically destroy aging, and he like eats his dinner by 11 a.m. and like, used to like receive blood transfusions from like his younger nephew and shit like that. And he's just kind of crazy. And Lauryn talked about how she got him to talk about his erections for like 30 minutes or whatever. And like, or Michael said, yeah, though Lauryn said that. And, it was like, I don't know if it was just Michael, if he would have said that. And Michael's kind of spoke to that as well. So it was a really interesting question. And afterwards, I totally came up and I pitched myself to talk about Gene Keys on their podcast. And here's what I'll say about that. Here's my learning lesson for that. Which I'm going to start by saying that I wouldn't have gotten this lesson if I hadn't done it. So if it terrifies you to meet one of your business mentors or heroes or idols or what, like imagine like meeting a celebrity. Like if it terrifies you to meet someone that you look up to, that you've followed parasocially for a while, and also talk to them about like you and pitch yourself, you need to do that. Like you need to do it to learn this lesson. So anyway, I wouldn't have gotten this lesson if I hadn't just done it. But yeah, so I went up and there were people in line to take a photo, and she was like, "Oh, I want to get everyone's picture." And I came up and I was like, "Oh, I don't want a picture. I just wanted to meet you." And she liked that. She was like, "Oh my God, that's so nice. No one ever says that, whatever." And then I very much rushed through my pitch, and didn't even describe like Gene Keys well. Like it was just a really embarrassing sort of breathless pitch. And she was like, "Yeah, email me. We've had a girl talk about it before." And she was like, "Just email me." And I was like, "Oh, what's your email?" And then I just blacked out while she told me her email. And I was like, I figure I'll just find it later because it's definitely not like her most private, whatever email. And I was like, "Amazing. Thank you so much. I'll definitely email you and have a great rest of your day." And it was just very awkward. I just like, it wasn't actually awkward for me. I was just embarrassed, but it was a fine enough interaction. And then I walked away and let the next person take their time, which as a total aside is something I realize I do a lot. I like very like subconsciously shorten my, like whenever there's a shortage of time, like there's not enough time for questions, or like they're needed to leave in 10 minutes. And so they like are trying to take their pictures as quickly as possible. I'm like so very conscious of that subconsciously. And I like rush through things. And this has happened to me so much in like in masterminds where there's only a limited amount of time to go through each person. And I go and I like get straight to the point and I like ask my question and I take up as little time as possible. And then the person after me takes up half of the call time for like 6 people. And I always get so frustrated by that. I get frustrated by people taking a really long time. But that frustration comes from, I always come back to like, why did I rush myself so much? Why did I try to be as small as possible in this time? Like, yeah, okay, like, yep, Lauryn wants to get to as many people as possible, but like I could have given myself another 30 seconds to like breathe and like say my pitch properly. And so this is what I'm telling you. I wouldn't have gotten this lesson if I hadn't gone up and done it. It was my first time pitching myself to such a big name in this type of way. And so had to do it to figure out what I needed to do differently. And the other things that I realized is, number one, I should have practiced my pitch beforehand. You hear this with tech founders, they practice their elevator pitch, whatever. I didn't do that, and I should have totally done that. That makes sense. You want to have a canned elevator pitch because guess what? In those moments, you're freaking out, man. You're so nervous. Like, you're like, oh my God, I listened to this person. I've been following them for years. Like, I've heard so many of their podcast episodes. I love what they do. Like, you idolize them in a way, you pedestalize them in a way, and you want them to like you. And it's nerve-wracking to think that you might embarrass yourself in front of them. And then you absolutely will if you don't have like a canned totally repeated million, like you want to have something in your arsenal, a pitch in your arsenal that you can just say in your fucking sleep, so that it comes out actually sounding well and calm. And then the other thing that I should have done is I should have totally tried to calm my nervous system a lot more before speaking. I was so shaky and so nervous, and I should have absolutely taken deep breaths, not only have practiced saying my pitch, but also I should have visualized it and how it would go, and visualize the best outcome, and just been in that energy of calm. I'm not rushed. I'm not frantic. I'm not nervous. I just, hey, like, I would love to talk about this, on your podcast or whatever. You should definitely say something way better than that, but still, it's like there are so many things I see that I could have done differently, and I'm so grateful that I put myself out there and freaking pitched myself to Lauryn freaking Bosstick so that I could get these lessons. And maybe I burned that bridge. Maybe it's already way too embarrassing and whatever. I obviously don't think that. But even if it was, I got all these amazing lessons from that, which was so cool. But yeah, so lessons learned. And then Mari spoke, and a couple other folks spoke. I don't know if you guys know Bloom Nutrition, the greens powder that is everywhere on TikTok. And that was actually the point of the talk. It was called TikTok Takeover, Cracking the Code of Viral Brand Growth. And again, I asked a question. I'd been a Bloom subscriber, and I asked about what the role of surprise and delight is in their business model, because when I was a Bloom subscriber, I got tons of free shit, which was so cool. And I love that. And here's like a little businessy lesson. It's like surprising and delighting your customers and sort of going above and beyond is super important. And it's something I think about a lot in my pricing. I like to price at a price point where I know that I'll feel good when I overgive, because it's not a question of if I'll overgive. I know that I am going to overgive because that is my nature, and I love to surprise and delight. And so I like to already set myself at a price point where when I overgive, I still feel good and I still feel compensated and I don't feel resentful. So I asked her about that, and she had like 10 seconds to answer. So it wasn't like a super like incredibly thought out answer, but she was like, the fact that you remember that means so much to me, and it means we did our job right. And it's so true. Like anytime that you get surprised by a company and you get something extra or an extra little gift or whatever, you remember that, which, by the way, Kinsey, since I know you're listening to this, you do this a lot. If you guys don't know, Kinsey Madsen, my business coach and friend, she's so generous with her courses and so generous with her products, and is always giving little surprises and delights and free things and little bonuses and gifts. And it has kept me around for such a long time, and it always feels so good to receive those little gifts and those little surprises. So it was fun to ask Mari about it. And then there were some AI conversations and a meetup, and I was like, I need to also, again, go home, eat. I was very tired by that point because I had not had any food yet at that point, because I was so committed to like being front row for the Bosstick's talk that I did not get the free breakfast tacos that they had. I was like, I'm just gonna stay right here and get this front row spot. So I went home and ate, came back for the happy hour, and it wasn't like as exciting. I definitely met some cool people. When I went to the Fast Company Girl happy hour, I met some leadership coaches and a sexuality coach who was so cool. But at the Founders House meetup, at the happy hour at the end of the day, I met this guy, and that was great. Marketing person. We had a great conversation. And then the next three people I met were just local Austinites who were just bumming off all the free South by Southwest stuff, which is their right. And they absolutely get to do that. And I was like, oh my gosh, it takes so much to like talk to someone at these events, to have it be someone who is not at all interested in any of the topics of the conference and is not there to network and is just there for the free drinks. So it was not the return on the investment that I was making. So they were all very sweet people, but not the people who I was looking to connect. So it was just so funny and a little bit frustrating that it happened 3 times in a row, but it was totally fine. And then after that, I went to this Latinos in Tech mixer, and it was actually horrendous. I met no one. It was so busy. It was impossible to get around. You were like shoulder to shoulder, just packed like sardines. And I was so uncomfortable there that I left. I grabbed a taco and left after like 10 minutes. I don't even think I was there for 10 minutes. I think I was probably there more for like 5 minutes. Like I walked in, I was already so exhausted too. But to walk in and be packed like a sardine in a can, and like The music was so loud. I mean, it was a gorgeous space, but like it was just there were so many people there. I was like, okay, I actually think I'm done. And I went home and I had taken a little edible a little bit before then. So by the time I got home, I was feeling nice and relaxed, and I just decompressed for a while and made the glorious mistake, obviously not a mistake, but um let's call it a glorious mistake, to watch Ariana Grande's new music video for her We Can't Be Friends song, and just cried, just sobbed for like an hour. Went from like such high highs to like, oh my God, she's erasing her memories. And it was just, forget this person. If you haven't watched the music video, you need to watch it. It references Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind a lot, and that is the title of her album. It's called Eternal Sunshine. And if you don't know Ariana Grande's story, she's had a lot of just trauma and difficult relationships. And so anything with lore gets me. That's what got me into being a Swiftie. It was all of Taylor Swift's, Easter eggs and lyrics, and to see Ariana Grande doing it too, who I loved Ariana's Sweetener album in 2018. Loved that album, and then I just stopped listening to her for years for some reason. And then she came back with this album. I was like, oh my God, I forgot that she is still also a genius and incredibly musically talented. So anyway, had so much fun crying to that and letting out all of the what's the word, all the Pisces new moon feels, and it feels, one of the things that I've really gotten out of human design and knowing that I have an emotional wave is knowing that I just need to get the emotions out, and I don't need to think about them or try to process why I'm having these emotions or why they're coming up, or why I feel this way, but just literally let them fly and just feel them. And it was so good to just, after such an intense 2 days of, driving in at midnight and then 2 days straight of networking and talking and fucking pitching myself and like, asking questions and being filmed. Oh, right. I got interviewed that day too. I forgot to mention that after the AI conversations, I got interviewed and then I went home before the happy hours. But yeah, after 2 days of all that intensity, it was so good to just like lay in on the couch and watch these videos and just cry and feel moved by music and art. And it was just so good to like be in that feeling. And then hilariously, my friend who I was staying with came home a little bit later, and she was like, what's funny? And I was like, what? She was like, this isn't the first time that I've come home and someone has been on my couch, like a friend has been on a couch crying about an Ariana Grande music video. Like it happened to her like 2 years ago with a different friend. I was like, what the fuck? I was like, you need that TikTok sound that's like it's from what's it called? Phineas and Ferb, where Doofenshmirtz, the villain, is like, if I had a nickel for every time this happened to me, I would have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right? It's like, I think it's so weird that it happened twice. But yeah, and the next day, so yesterday, Tuesday, I wasn't decided if I was initially going to leave on Monday night, but then because I'd met so many people and I got invited to things later this week, so things happening tomorrow and things happening this weekend, I wasn't sure if I was going to stay. But I had 5 calls yesterday. I had a call with my Readings on Repeat students. It was our monthly coaching call. I had a call with my Master Key, Gene Keys Reader Training students. We were discussing the Human Design module. I had a podcast interview. I had a call with my accountant. I had a call with my team member. So I was like, I had so many calls. And at 9 a.m., I was like, I need to go home and to be in Houston to like do the calls. Like I need to like, I can't be here and just like take over my friend's space and just like do 7 hours of calls. Like in a kitchen where someone's trying to like live their life. So I just drove back spontaneously yesterday. May come back, this weekend. I'm not sure, but for now, I wanted to capture the freshness of the South by experiences. And to finish this off, I want to say again, things that I'm really proud of myself for. Number one, sitting at the front of these talks and asking questions. Like literally like do that. Please do that at events. Ask questions. You'll be remembered. Think of good questions to ask. Think of how the way that I think about asking questions is like, how can I make that person shine? How can I ask them a great question that they're going to love answering, and that it's going to add, and that will add value to the conversation and will add value to the people listening in on the conversation. So that's my tip for questions, that I'm proud of myself that I asked questions at basically every talk I went to where there was time to ask questions. I'm really proud of pitching myself to Lauryn freaking Bosstick. Like, oh my God, like So sweet. So great to hear them talk. And even though I was shaking like a freaking chihuahua and, didn't practice my pitch beforehand or really ground myself at all, I did it anyway. And I got like lessons from that, and it was really cool. So proud of myself for that. And yeah, I'm proud of myself for going solo to these events. I know so many people that would never go alone to something like this. So let me know if you're one of those people. But I know a lot of people that would never go alone to this stuff because it is really scary. It is scary to go alone. It's scary to not know anyone, to, you know, think that you might not talk to anyone that at these events. But guess what? The worst that could happen is that you're just sitting or staring and having a drink and being on your phone. Like, really, like, is that the worst that could happen? Like, nothing's happening, It doesn't feel the best. It is uncomfortable to think about, but it really, anyway, I've realized it's really not. Like, that is the worst case scenario. Like, okay, I'm just standing by myself for like 5 minutes. So I hope you can take that as a lesson from me as well. But I'm proud of myself for meeting lots of people. And last two things that I realized from this I think were super interesting. One, actually, something I both realized and something that was said at the one of the talks is your impressions do matter and people will remember you. I've said that a little bit with like asking questions and stuff like that, but even with all the random people that I met in the like networking parts of this event, it's like, yeah, right now I might not have this like huge ass company or whatever, and they might not have this huge ass company or whatever, but in 20 years we could reconnect and the impression that I made at that time is going to matter. And so, not like, there's obviously so much to be said for being present and not always, worrying about the future or being super future oriented. As a 3420, that is my natural state of being, but also there's something else to be said for like truly always being kind and always presenting the best parts of yourself, especially at these events, and not like, oh, let me like pretend and put on this fake persona, but just like, yeah, being your best and being kind. And at one of the talks, it was so interesting because the first talk I went to, two of the women on the panel 20 years prior were on like a presidential campaign together, like working for it, and had literally not spoken in 20 years, and now they're on this panel together, and they talked about how like it mattered who they were back then because now they're doing this panel together, and what if like one of them had been horrible or they had like hated each other or whatever. So I kept having to, not I kept having to, but rather I kept reminding myself, or being reminded, there we go. I kept being reminded of that throughout the event, of like, I'm meeting these people and who knows where they're going to be and who knows where I'm going to be. And I think about when I was going to these events, the first time I went to the first and last time I went to the Fast Company Girl was 7 years ago. And like, who would have known that I would have had the business that I have now and the platform that I have now back then? So that was really exciting, very sort of future self expansive, and just reminding to always show up as your best and be your best, and not like a super cringe bro marketing way, but like in just a real, like, yeah, authentic way. And the other last thing that was particularly interesting to me was thinking about all of the parts of me that have to die for me to be on stage at South by. So let me explain what I mean by that. If I have the dream to be one of these speakers one day and have my stage and have something to say, I my intuition is telling me that I'll be playing at a much bigger level for that to happen. Like, I'll need to be playing at a much bigger level for that to happen. And there's so many things right now that I do, little habits, thoughts, beliefs, mindsets that I have that just aren't going to work to get me to that place. And I get to let those parts of me die, and I get to let them go because they're not serving that next level version of me, whoever she is, that future self version of me. And it's not like I have to change everything about myself and nothing is working. Like, obviously not. Most of what I do and most of who I am really works, but there's also some things that don't work. There's limiting beliefs, there's ways that I self-sabotage, there's places where I want to show up bigger, things I want to do more of, things I want to do less of. And it was so interesting to think about, like, to really put myself in that place. Like, what would it take to have this type of clout, you could say, to be one of these speakers on one of these stages one day, which I know is going to happen, whether it's South by or not. I'll have that quintessential experience. And it was just really interesting to think about. And I'm really proud of myself for setting my value and standing up for myself when giving a free short Gene Keys interpretation and having the person receiving it complain about how it's taking too long. It's like, okay, hang on a second. This is like a really generous gift. So proud of myself for all of that. It was so great. And one of the things to finish this off that was so great to have happening during this whole time is I had so many signups all the time for my latest program, which doesn't actually have a name yet, but it is a Notion template and a tutorial mini course. So right now it is in trust fall pricing. So what does that mean? It means there's not very many details out yet because I'm still putting everything together and putting the name and the branding together, but you can sign up and secure really, really discounted pricing right now. It's $97 for all of my Notion templates and tutorials and live calls where we are going to implement these templates together. And the price is going to triple or quadruple in the next couple of days. So, and it will raise starting tomorrow. It'll double starting tomorrow, Thursday, the 14th. So, I just had someone sign up 1 minute ago. I was looking at my phone to see the dates, and I just had some folks sign up, which is super exciting. So again, that was a great thing that was happening all weekend, was having folks sign up to the Notion Trust Fall. So if you want to get all of the templates that for example, one that I'm using right now for my podcast. If you want to get all my templates for Notion of how I run my life, how I run my business, how I run my content, my travel, everything, my health on Notion, this is the course for that. You are going to get access, forever lifetime access to updates, by the way. So if I end up adding like new templates or updating the templates, you'll get access to the new templates and the updated templates in there. But access to all my templates, tutorials where I show you how to put them together and how to use them. And if you join us live, calls where we implement them together and you get to ask me questions and we get to talk about this experience, that this is the program for you. It is fucking amazing. I've been using Notion for years. I built the compendium on Notion and have made over $125,000. So you can sell Notion templates if you learn how to make really good ones. And it's going to be an amazing fucking program. So I'm so excited, and you can find the link below. We'll start at the end of March, and you can get access to trust fall pricing if you sign up right now live when this comes out on Wednesday, March 13th, 2024. The price doubles tomorrow, and it's going to continue to go up before the program actually starts. And if I continue to add to it, then the price will continue to increase. So sign up and get the trust fall pricing as early as you can to save the most. And I'll see you in there. But yeah, this is what I learned from my experience at South by Southwest and putting myself out there and connecting with the people, the movers and shakers that I want to be connected to. This stuff is so important if you're wanting to grow, just like personally, not just your business, but like grow your like belief in yourself and grow your like expand your mind to what's possible, putting yourself in cool ass spaces like this, and then putting yourself out there and actually talking to people and maybe even pitching yourself. It's just like such a quantum leap. So more to say on this topic when we get to the friendship and networking episode. That'll be fun. Let me know if you have any questions about that. And let me know if you have any questions about this. And if you have any questions about Notion and the Notion Trust Fall program linked below. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Bye. All right, my friend, thanks for joining me on another ride aboard the Shortcuts to Mastery spaceship. You can get started on your human design and Gene Keys journey with me today for free by going to mariahenning.com/chart, which is linked below. If you're a visuals lover as well as an audiophile, then definitely join the party over on Instagram at @ByMariaHenning for lots of fun and beautiful educational content. And to tag me in the stories with the episodes you listen to so I can repost you. And of course, if you're here, you know it totally rocks for podcasts to receive great ratings. So if you're feeling warm and fuzzy and want to share, I'd be eternally grateful. I can't wait to connect again. Thanks for being here. And until next time, here's to everything going easier, better, and faster than expected.